everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hazy Sports Podcast. I'm Jason Brown, joined as always by my good friend and co-host Charlie Ashbury. Charlie, we're back after 2-week break from recording. How you doing today?
Good. I'm kind of going through withdrawals after that last weekend we had. I think by this time last Saturday, everyone was a couple pints deep. But yeah, good to be back.
Yeah, we had a good time at the bachelor party. It was a blast. But I have to admit, when this weekend rolled around and I didn't have too much on the calendar, I was pretty relieved to have a bit of a recharge weekend. But good weekend up at the cottage. It took me until about Wednesday this week to get my voice back, and took me till about yesterday before my brain feels like it was operating properly. But I guess 2 days of nonstop drinking at the cottage will do that to you when you're in your mid 40s.
It's funny, I actually have that written down, finally recovered by Wednesday. So we were on the same page there. What a different experience in your late 40s than when you were, I think one of our first friends was married when we were probably 26-ish maybe, where it's just go balls balls out and there's no rest. But couple things I'd just like to say is shout out to Sawdust City Brewing. That guy, whoever the
Yeah.
server was that day, he was awesome. Great place, great service. If you see Little Norway in your LCBO, I highly recommend it. And the only other thing I will say about the bachelor party is nobody in history has ever said, "Man, I wish I had more shots last night." Like just a terrible idea. Too old for that.
The shots of fireball seemed like a great idea at the time, but when you're trying to bounce back the next day, you kind of second guess some of those decisions. But it was great to see everybody. Glad so many people could make it out, but excited to be back into the regular routine and feeling back to normal again. How's your week been? I heard you took the family out for wings this week.
So I won't say the name of the place, but we went to one of these wing restaurants where I guess their selling point is that they have like 150 different sauces and stuff like that, which whatever, if that's your gimmick, but when there's a second menu that lists all the sauce and then they say if you need any help with the sauces, I think you're kind of overdoing it a little bit, right? Like what happened to just mild honey garlic, maybe an extremely hot one. But the thing that pissed me off the most was so you have these 150 sauces, but then you get to the beer menu and you have four beers on tap. And it's your Coors Light, your Bud Light, Stella, and whatever the other one was, and maybe Canadian. And I'm like, I think that's where you should probably focus your attention.
Maybe take about 50 sauces off and exchange it for 6 or 7 different pints on tap.
I just think they're trying too hard. But it was good, don't get me wrong, but nobody at the table ordered anything, over the top anyways. So I feel like they could probably cut her back by 80 sauces or so.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm kind of a straight down the middle kind of guy. Usually a medium sauce, maybe a little honey garlic if I'm feeling dangerous.
Yeah,
Nice to get out for wings anyways with the fam.
for sure.
But yeah, other news this week. I know we've got tons of hockey stuff to dive into today, but just wanted to recognize opening day in baseball kicked off officially this week. I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but I do have to say whenever opening day rolls around, kind of feels like the unofficial kickoff to summer. Where's your excitement and enthusiasm level for baseball at right now?
Well, I like watching baseball and Jays fan, but I don't know. It's kind of the sport's kind of getting a little bit ruined with the Dodgers seemingly signing every single decent player that comes up. And I don't know, the way the Jays have been managed, it's going to be a tough go, I think. How you screw up just paying guys it will never make sense to me. Like all you have to do is pay your best guy, and we can't even do that.
Well, I was looking at the over under totals for wins for the Jays. I think they're at 78, and the Tigers were at 82 and a half, I believe. So I thought maybe we should have a little friendly wager to make the season a little more interesting. Well, we
Sure.
can we can figure out what the prize is, but I'll take Tigers wins. You take Jays wins. Whoever has more wins at the end of the year
That's a
has to
great
do
idea.
something crazy.
has to do more shots.
Nice. Well, yeah, we'll keep an eye on baseball, but we got lots of hockey to get to today. Since we talked last, the playoff picture is starting to take shape a little bit more. I think we're having a pretty good idea of who's going to be in there. There's obviously a couple wild card spots for grabs, but I thought we should start first with your Oilers. I know we talk a lot about them, but some tough breaks for them. 6-1 loss to the Kraken. They lost to the Stars. Got guys running your goalie, Skinner's out, Pickard's in, you got your two main guys out, and you're now LA's ahead of you. You've lost the home ice advantage in that matchup. How are you feeling?
So the LA thing bugs me because this is something I've already mentioned, but they're ahead of us because they have 9 of these loser points. They have 9 overtime loss points, which I think I've already mentioned a few times is the dumbest thing in the standings. But I'm almost looking at this other outside of Skinner being hurt. Hopefully he's okay. But I'm almost looking at this kind of like what we were saying with Ekblad, where this could be a blessing in disguise here. Because now you're kind of forced McDavid to take a break. Draisaitl might be back tonight, they're saying. He was skating yesterday. But you're also forcing these guys on the bottom six and maybe the second line to actually step up a little bit. And we saw Nugent Hopkins just went off there for a few games and he looked like the 22-23 season guy again. And if anything, I think it's building a bit of confidence back for these other guys who maybe don't get the opportunity to play as much, but it's been rough to watch. Like I looked at the lineup the other day, and it was the top line was Pod Colson, Nugent Hopkins, and Connor Brown for some reason. We're running out of power play one with Corey Perry on it, who's 41 years old. Like it's been a rough watch, but hopefully these guys coming back with some rest will kind of get the wheels going again.
Yeah, it should be interesting if you get the big guns back healthy before the playoffs. The Oilers going in under the radar is probably not a bad thing, as you say, as opposed to kind of going into the playoffs with everybody expecting them to win a cup.
Run it, yeah.
Sticking in the Western Conference, we got the Blues, pretty much the hottest team since the Four Nations Cup, and kind of rubbing a little salt in the wound of Oilers fans as they're doing it with two guys that you pretty much kind of gave away there last season. Any thoughts on that?
I got a
I
lot of
feel like
thoughts on
I'm
this.
antagonizing you a little bit right off the start of the podcast here.
It definitely sucks, but we also, there was no way we could have paid Broberg the $4 million for a guy who played, I think up to that point, 21 NHL games. Now he was great in the playoffs for them, probably their second best defenseman. Holloway is a fucking mystery to me because it's 2 million over 2 years. How you couldn't find that money? But the Blues, I will say the Blues and Columbus Blue Jackets are two of my favorite watches right now. Like they're fun, they're fast, and they score a ton of goals. And I'm not sure I'd want to be playing them in the first round if they end up getting in. And the crazy thing about them too is they don't have a lot of big contracts, so you can add to this. And I just read this morning they're adding Jimmy Snuggerud's coming up. He's gonna be with them next week. So there's another young guy who can score. Like pretty deadly team.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that guys that get put out early in the NCAA tournament they've had enough time to develop as prospects that they're at the point where they can jump right into a playoff run.
And it's an easy ad, right? Because all these guys are on entry level contracts, so you don't have to worry about your cap at all because most of them are making, I don't know, maybe, oh, well, now it'll be prorated for the end of the year. So it's like adding a guy for 40 grand basically for the rest of the year. Watch out for the Blues.
Sticking in the Western Conference for a minute here, we also got the Canucks. They've been playing good lately. Elias is out, but Demko looking great in the last few games and has been keeping them in.
We've almost got like a reverse curse on anybody we seem to mention, right? Because we were shitting on the Canucks pretty hard there, and now they're right back in the mix of it. We kind of took a shot at Bedard not too long ago, and he's been on fire. But I watched some Columbus, Vancouver last night, and Vancouver, if they can, it wasn't the best defensive performance, but if they can get Demko playing like he did the night before, they'd definitely be a live dog too, I think, in the first round.
Yeah, both of them and the Flames are playing well down the stretch, but I don't know the way the Blues are playing. I don't know if they're going to catch them for that last spot. So we may get one more Canadian team in, but it doesn't look like we're going to get all of them in this year.
No, and Montreal's kind of slipping now too a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of takes me over to the Eastern Conference here, which we haven't really talked about. But yeah, Ottawa kind of manhandled Detroit, particularly. I don't know if you saw, like, I don't know how he gets away with it, but Kachuk, I love the guy, but he's almost did like a flying tackle on Raymond at center ice, puts him in like a rear naked choke while Stutzel goes down and scores. Disappointing as a Wings fan to see that felt like the kind of final nail in the coffin for Detroit this year. They're not mathematically out of it, but they actually played pretty well. Made a game of it at the end, but Allmark stood on his head again, and they just didn't have enough to get it done. But I think that pretty much solidifies Ottawa in there for one of the wild card spots.
Yeah, I'm really hoping the Leafs can somehow catch Florida because I think Toronto and Ottawa in a first round matchup would be absolutely nuts. And I'm not even sure who I would take in that.
Yeah, I think that one could go either way. That would be a great matchup. Obviously, we haven't had Battle of Ontario in a while, so that would
So
be pretty
with
sweet.
the East, do you think this is good? Like obviously all these games mean something, but I look at the standings and I'm like the Islanders are 3 points out of the playoffs. Does anybody want to see the friggin' Islanders in the playoffs? As much
No,
as it's neat to have every game counts right now, some of these teams should not be in the playoffs.
yeah, I wouldn't really want to see the Islanders in there, but I'm not sure. I think there's three teams tied for that last spot right now, and the Islanders are then 1 point back, and even the Wings are three points back, so not completely out of it. But I think to your point earlier, if the Wings aren't going to get it, I'd like to see the Blue Jackets get in there. Kind of a feel good story and a lot of players that are fun to watch. Just listen to that Olivier interview on Chicklets this week. That was pretty cool, and just kind of hearing his story is just another kind of fun reason to follow that team.
Absolutely. He scored the game tying goal last night. Well, it ended up going to a shootout, but they were down 5-4 and he tied the game up and that friggin' crowd was so amped up and he's fist bumping and like getting whooping the crowd up. Like what a friggin' player. Does everything. Like that's I know he would never make a Team Canada, but that's the kind of guy that, just gets everybody going and scores, fights. Like you can't ask for a better bottom six guy.
And they have a pretty good young core to build on. They could
Dude.
be really good over the next few years.
And another team that's not spending a ton of money, like you could bring in some pretty heavy guys in the next couple of years and be right there. Goaltending needs to be improved, but I guess if you score seven, as long as you don't give up six, you're all right.
Yeah, so we've got about 2 weeks left to the playoffs. I think, most of the teams are pretty safely in there, really. I think it's just that final wild card spot in the West and the final one in the East that are up for grabs right now. But obviously some jockeying for seating position that can happen. So up next, we've got a new segment we're introducing called the Weekly Hazing. Charlie, do you want to talk about this a little bit before we get into it?
Yeah, so I think this is just the biggest stories happening this week, and we're just going to kind of give our 2 cents on it and not dive too deep into it, but just give our thoughts. And we'll have a few topics each week. Could be good, could be bad, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let's get into it.
Wave it off. Fuck, let's go. Fucking wear that stick at me again, you're gonna fucking eat it. Karen fucking teeth. You wanna get knocked out again? We got a guy for you.
Our 2 cents on it and not dive too deep into it, but just give our thoughts and we'll have a few topics each week. Could be good, could be bad, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let's get into it. Okay, kicking things off for the weekly hazing this week, I think we got to start with Torts out in Philly. Charlie, what was your reaction when you first heard this?
I'm not surprised. Like, I don't know. I like the guy personally. I think he's a good coach. He's an interesting character. But when you come out 2 days before you get fired and you're basically telling the media you're not interested in being a part of this, that usually signals the end pretty quick.
That was my first reaction too, is it seemed like kind of a funny time of year to do it with, only a handful of games left in the season. But obviously, yeah, those comments after the Toronto game kind of forced their hands.
Just gonna say, like, I don't know if this style of coaching still works anymore. It seems like it can get you to a point, like they were almost in the playoffs last year, and pretty remarkable job. But I think he probably wears pretty thin pretty quick.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of, there's certain football coaches like that too, where they come in, they kind of really grind guys down. They can kind of change the culture, but after about 3 years, guys start tuning them out. And so that's what everybody's saying. There's sort of a team like the Rangers or something might benefit where you have a bunch of veteran guys and you just need them to kind of galvanize that team. But you definitely wouldn't want to put them on a team with young talent, like Bedard or on the Sharks.
I would say I kind of disagree there because I think he can sort of motivate the young guys a little bit. I think a good landing spot for him might be Buffalo, where there is some talent and maybe they need a shift in focus on playing the 200-foot game as opposed to the offensive side. But he just it just seems to run himself out of these jobs because it doesn't seem like he's the most fun guy to be around. But that said, I would rather have a guy with personality like that than like Edmonton. Knobloch's a great coach, but it's literally like listening to a robot anytime that he talks. And I can't imagine he's the greatest motivator.
Yeah, it's sort of like Torts has like this sort of element of the Mike Keenan sort of approach where he can be a dick. But Mike Keenan seemed like he was just a complete psycho that was just fucking with guys nonstop. Whereas like Torts has sort of that disciplinarian side, but he does seem like there's a side to him that the guys can respect. And if you're the right type of player, a lot of guys say they love playing for him.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I bet you a lot of guys that won with him probably love the guy. And if you're a bottom six guy who's not interested in playing in your own end, probably hate the guy.
I saw a highlight of Mishkov, and all of a sudden in practice, he's coming in and doing sort of between the legs laser beams, sort of top corner, pulling out all those moves. And they were kind of joking around, saying he probably would have got benched for 3 games pulling that shit out in practice with Torts there. All of a sudden he's gone. He's getting into his bag.
Yeah. Yeah, he probably had a big exhale. Like, finally, I can do some stuff I'm good at now.
But yeah, I was kind of looking at his coaching career. Kind of forgot what a run he had. He started with Tampa, won a cup with them in 2004, won a Jack Adams that year. Had a good run with them. But the one I always remember is actually when he was coach for the Blue Jackets, and they were the 8th seed. They were playing Tampa in the first round, who was the number 1 seed and had just set the record or tied the record for most wins in a season, and they swept them in the first round. And you're sort of like, wow, when they got that first game, you thought that was luck, and next thing you know, it's 4 games straight. And I think that's the type of effect he can have on it, is take a team that's maybe underperforming a bit and sort of instill that belief. But yeah, I think he won a Jack Adams that year with the Blue Jackets as well.
That's the thing, right? Like, if the team buys into his deal, it's effective. But if you don't win and he's still pulling it, you're just gonna lose the room, I think.
And there's certain guys that just don't work with him. Like when Line came in, like you just knew that was not going to be a good match right off the bat. Like super talented guys that don't have a great, are known for their defensive work output and two-way play.
He would have had a rough go in the 80s when it seemed like no one could play defense. Torts would have probably had a stroke.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Turning 67 this year. I actually thought he looked pretty good for his age. Like,
I hope he ends up on a panel at least for the playoffs, because he's pretty good at the media stuff too.
Absolutely. That would be great to see inject a little personality into one of those panels.
Especially if we could make it a 7 or 8 person panel so everyone only gets to talk for 3 seconds.
But let's shift gears to our next subject. We talked coaching here. Now let's talk some players. We've got a bunch of player milestones that have either happened or are kind of tracking, and some that we've talked about before. But I think we should kick things off with Crosby getting that point per game record. Now 20 straight seasons, beating Gretzky's 19. He did it in a 7-3 loss to the Sabres, so that kind of took a little of the celebratory energy out of it. Where you're at with that record? It doesn't get the same sort of fanfare that Ovi's goal record gets, but pretty damn impressive nonetheless.
The consistency is ridiculous. And I was looking into the stats, and he's top in the league in five on five points too. So it's not like he's banking points on the power play and stuff. Like he's still at how old is he? 37?
I think
Still,
so.
yeah, still one of the best producers. Like I don't know. I think this should be more heralded as a record, because to even play that many years is crazy, but to still be a key contributor, now they're not very good, but the fact he could still put up the numbers.
That's kind of what I was surprised. It's a pretty impressive record, and maybe it doesn't hit on quite the level as the goals record that Ovi's chasing, but we've been hearing nothing but the goals chase record. I didn't even hear anybody really mentioning this points per game record until he was 8 or 9, 10 points away from doing it. So it's a pretty impressive record that it wasn't really on anybody's radar until about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I would love to see that guy go somewhere next year or the year after and make another run, but I don't think anyone's going to come close to this again. Like to even make 20 years is ridiculous, but to put up a point a game for 20 years is, I think this should be right on par with the goal record, because it's just as difficult.
Yeah, same here. But another milestone was Nylander getting his third straight 40-goal season. Only the second Swede to do that. Do you know who the other one was?
I'm going to say Marcus Naslund, maybe.
Bingo.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. But
That's another guy kind of gets lost. You forget how good he was too. But yeah, Nylander, I think we talked about this. No one seems to make things look easier out there when he's got the puck. Doesn't always make the best decisions, but he just looks so effortless.
absolutely, yeah, like McDavid's impressive, but it almost looks like somebody's dumped, 100 cups of coffee into his system when he's out there just going. Whereas with Nylander, yeah, he makes it look about as smooth as anybody, almost like he's in practice or just playing a game of pickup hockey, and somehow just glides his way to 40 plus goals 3 years in a row. So yeah, it kind of brings up an interesting debate maybe for another episode of who you would rather have between him and Marner, kind of in that same ballpark.
Yeah, if you would have asked me this last year, I would have had no problem answering. But I'm kind of turning the corner on Mitch now. I think he's got a little more grit. Well, not grit. I wouldn't say grit, but just a more drive to win after that Four Nations thing. Like he looks like he's kind of on a mission.
I think the playoffs will decide a lot, it'll be
Yeah,
kind of that next chapter, and he's been great in the regular season for a long time, so he needs to do it in the playoffs. And I think if he can have a good playoff run, I think the narrative will change for good on
for
Marner.
old Mitch. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
So those are two milestones that got hit recently. A couple other ones that we're tracking. Of course, no surprises. Creeping ever closer to the goal record. He now needs 6 in 10 games. I don't know what Vegas has that at. I'd say 40 to 50% chance of doing it this season.
If he can get a multi-goal game, one of these games, I think he's going to do it. But he's definitely running out of time. I kind of hope that he does do it, because I would like to see the fanfare and stuff like that. And I don't know. He's had so many chances, like the other night when he passed up the empty netter so his teammate could get a hat trick, and just put him in that circle on the power play and let him hammer away.
It's kind of a bit of a 50-50 right now. It would be a pretty cool moment to have right before the playoffs, just to sort of get the excitement, ratchet it up even more. Makar, now he's on target. Obviously, his 30 goal mark isn't as quite as significant, but he's 3 away now, and he's got 9 games left. So again, probably about a 50-50 chance that he hits that this year.
Yeah, I think he should get that, but you never know. They got so many weapons on that team too. Like it's that team's gonna be deadly. They seem to want to get it to him a lot. Like I've seen a lot of their stuff recently, and he's definitely shooting. But then you also get to the end when maybe you clinch and maybe you sit these guys down. It's hard to say how important these things are to these guys too. But I think he'll get that one.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And then the only other one, which isn't really a milestone, but something I thought was worth talking about, is Marchand made his return last night. We're recording Saturday morning. The episode's going to drop Monday, but Marchand made his debut with the Panthers last night, and of course sets up the winning goal in OT. What'd you think of that?
So I flipped over just as overtime was starting, and he came on, I think, the second shift, and he picked up the puck and he almost beat the guy and almost scored. And I was like, man, he looked like a different player out there. Like he looked like he had a little bit more get up and go. He made a nice move around the net, holding the guy off. And I was like, man, he looks good. And then he set up the winning goal. And then, like, for a second round pick, how wasn't every team calling about this guy?
He's going to be such a valuable guy in the playoffs. Whether he gets as many points as he has in the past, I think it's just more he's going to be there in the right moments. He's got no pressure. You don't need him to be the guy every game, but if he gets you like 4 or 5 sort of clutch moments, clutch
You're
plays throughout the playoffs, that's all teams like Florida need. They got so much depth that I could
right.
see him being, having a pretty good run here in the playoffs.
Yeah, you can add a Hall of Famer to your bottom 6. Like that's ridiculous. And I think so many teams got to be like, why didn't we at least call?
Yeah, no kidding. Lots of interesting player milestones to keep an eye on here. Obviously, if and when Ovi gets it, we'll do a bit of a deeper dive and a look back on his career. But let's switch gears to our third topic here, where we want to talk about the NHL playoff seeding system. It's been a bit of a polarizing topic lately, and it's kind of become more front and center in the news as Bettman was being interviewed and kind of really doubled down on it and saying he wants to stick with it. He feels like it's the best format. I think what's maybe had people talking about it a little bit more than past years is the fact that right now it looks like Colorado and Dallas are going to be a first round matchup, which you would almost have those two as the favorites in the West right now, or I guess Winnipeg there, but a pretty powerhouse first round matchup that you would generally expect to see either in the second round or the conference finals. What are your general thoughts on the playoff seeding system?
I get the idea, right? How we're trying to build these rivalries, but what's your advantage to finishing higher in the standings if you're just gonna play the same team every year? Like how many times did we see Leafs Boston? This will be the third or fourth year in a row we're getting Edmonton, LA. Like I don't know. I prefer the 1-8 myself because now you've actually, your seeding makes a little bit more difference. Ideally, you're not losing one of these big teams first round like the Dallas, Colorado. I don't know. Me personally, I prefer the old way. I don't really care for this wild card stuff. I'd love to go back to the old school where it was just the Atlantic and the Wales and the Campbell Conference and everyone's all in one friggin' division or one conference lineup and you just play the 8th team if you're the best team. Like that's my view anyways.
Yeah, I would love to go back to that. It just makes it a lot easier to follow, and it just makes a lot more sense 1 versus 8 and then kind of break it down from there.
I was just gonna say it's almost confusing. Like until it gets to the last like this part of the year, I don't even know who you're playing, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so
I still don't understand how it works.
maybe we're dumb. I don't know. But it is way too complicated, I think. Give me the 1-8. I can process the 1-8.
Yeah, same here. But doesn't sound like Bettman's going to change it anytime soon, so we may not get our way. But just wanted to get your opinion on that one here. One team we haven't really talked a lot about since we started this podcast is the Utah Hockey Club. They were kind of battling for that one of the final wild card seeds in the West there for a bit, but have kind of fallen off. So I don't think it's happening for them. But they're kind of relevant just from the naming standpoint. So they had Yeti in place, and I guess they got sued from
Yeah.
Yeti, the cooler company or the coffee cup company.
Yeah.
So they had to pivot, and now they're back. They've got three options. They've got the Mammoth, the Outlaws, or sticking with the Utah Hockey Club. I'm curious to know which one you like the best out of those.
I'm probably going to be in the minority, but I actually like Utah HC. And maybe that's the soccer fan in me, but I don't get North America's obsession with having some sort of name to go with the team. Like I like that it's Manchester United, Manchester City. I know they have other nicknames, but I just like that better than, a stupid one like the Toronto Raptors. It's just a terrible name.
Agreed. Yeah, I was leaning more Outlaws than Mammoth, definitely, if I had to pick between those two, just because I think Mammoth is a little bit corny and um Outlaws. I just watched that American Primeval show
Yeah,
on Netflix. Here, I thought I didn't realize Utah had this sort of hardcore past like that, but that's a pretty good show for anybody listening out there that hasn't checked it out. But yeah, Outlaws has a little bit more of a ring to it. But I have to admit, when I was looking at their current jerseys, I was like, there's almost kind of nothing wrong with it the way it is right now. I think they look
yeah.
good.
And I guess it all comes down to selling stuff. So if you can put a cool logo, you're gonna make millions in merchandise. But I actually like Utah Hockey Club. I think that's a great name.
I'm kind of with you. I think Utah Hockey Club, they're the only team in the NHL that's gone that route. It's got a nice ring to it. And why try to sometimes if there's nothing sort of obvious to represent your state, why try to force a mammoth or something on there, which feels like a little corny and cheesy.
Exactly,
Probably sells more merch to the kids, but
for sure.
yeah, speaking of expansion teams, it seems like there's pretty good chance Houston's going to be getting a team in the next few years, which I got no problem with Houston necessarily as a team, but it's like I'm just still wrapping my head around having Utah and Seattle. Like you need a little time to build sort of this affinity to or an appreciation. I still when I see the Kraken or Utah, in my brain almost wants to think of them as like an AHL team playing up in the NHL just because you need a little time to just sort of digest them as an NHL team.
Yeah, I don't know what the rush is. Like they're saying Houston and then probably Atlanta for a third time. And I'm just like, is there enough talent as it is? Like you think about the playoff teams right now that are I know my team specifically and a few other teams. They can't find a goalie that's good enough to get them to that point, and now you're going to add one, possibly two more teams. I just think it's spreading way too thin here.
Okay, well, our last topic for the weekly hazing, a nice segue from the Utah name decision, because with every new name, you need a new jersey and logo. So we got talking and we wanted to nominate what we thought was some of the best logo jersey combinations of all time. Now, there's obviously a ton of different directions that you could go with this. So I wanted to give you a few categories to think about, Charlie.
Okay.
I want you to give me your best current jersey. I want you to give me your worst current jersey, and then open it up to your favorite one of all time.
Okay, so my favorite current would be they only wear it every once in a while, but I like they actually are not wearing it at all this year, but I love the navy blue and dark orange Edmonton shirt that was an alternate for the past 5 years, I believe. They're not wearing it this year, but that's like as clean as can be as far as I'm concerned. How about you?
Yeah, I like that one too. I went back and forth on a couple, but ultimately for me, the jerseys I like are the ones that are simple, kind of 2D, not too much detail. And there's just something about the orange Flyers jerseys, just the classic. I like the way the name is on the back with sort of on the sort of rectangle. I just love the orange and I love the simplicity of that logo. I definitely kicked around a few. I do love the Wings jerseys. I think the Blackhawks is a classic as well. And when you get into some of those alternate jerseys, there's some pretty cool ones, but yeah, ultimately I picked the Flyers for mine.
It's a good one. I like those too. Worst current jersey, that's a tough one, but as much as I love the orange of the Flyers, I can't stand those new orange Ducks jerseys. I think they're terrible.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those either.
And it's a weird shade of orange. Like, I don't know. I think they missed the mark there.
Yeah, agreed. I think for me, my least favorite one is the Senators. Not just their regular jerseys. I just don't like that color combination. I find the logo a little too detailed, and maybe just a subjective thing. But every time I see those jerseys, it just they don't do it for me.
Yeah, it's not great. It's too much, and they've actually had a history of horrible jerseys. You remember the ones that just said Sens on it? Like that might be the worst jersey of all time.
Yeah, they've had a bad run.
So my favorite one of all time, and it's sort of a classic, but it's not. They brought it back in Carolina, but I don't think you can have a better jersey than the Hartford Whalers jersey. From logo and color scheme, that is money to me.
Yeah, I love those ones too. Though that one was definitely on my short list. It just kind of brings back all the nostalgia from those ones. But those.
So good, so good.
I had a few. I had the North Stars on my short list. I had the Whalers on my short list. But ultimately, the one I went with was the Quebec Nordique, the baby blue ones. I love those ones, and maybe some of the reasons we love those is because they're kind of in that era of when we were growing up, so they've got the nostalgic vibe. But I just like the simplicity of those ones, and the colors. They had that they got that retro look to them that is pretty cool. And again, the Avs wore sort of a third jersey this year with the Nordiques logo, and it looked pretty sweet.
Yeah, that was number two on my list. I had Hartford, Quebec, and then I had the Northers as well. Just I don't know if it's we just saw it so much growing up, but just simple but effective.
The one honorable mention I wanted to give for best team that has had multiple great jerseys is the Kings, because I think the combination of the purple ones with anyways, that kind of wraps up our weekly hazing segment. Good chatting those through with you, Charlie.
I've been reviewing your work. Quite frankly, it stinks. These reports you handed in, it's almost as if you have no business training at all.
Okay, we're back for our report card segment here. So Charlie's going to kick it off with our grades for the week.
All right, I'm going in a bit of a different direction this week. I'm going to recognize some of the junior players. Kicking things off with an A+ for Nick Lardis. He plays for the Brantford Bulldogs. He just came off a 71 goal season. It's the most goals in the OHL since John Tavares. And a lot of people kind of writing him off because he is a bit of an undersized forward. To go from 25 to 29 to 71 goals is, he's showing the hard work. And I think the Blackhawks could have a potential sniper on their hands. So A+.
Nice. I'm going, keeping it in the prospect vibe for mine. I'm going A+ for the men's NCAA hockey tournament. I guess the March Madness of hockey. Not something I've watched a lot in the past, but I've been getting into it more since we've been doing the podcast. But had a chance to watch Cornell upset Michigan State. I watched Boston College squeak out one against Bentley the other day. All these games are on YouTube. But what I love is it's great hockey. The teams are loaded with high-end NHL draft picks, and the single elimination format of hockey just makes them so exciting to watch. A+ there. I can't wait to watch the Frozen Four.
All right, shifting gears here. I'm going to give a hard F to the NHL. So the night before March Madness goes on, you have one game. Okay. So you're trying to captivate a North American audience. The day that the March Madness kicks off, you decide to throw in 14 games to go head to head with, arguably the biggest opening day of a sport. I don't know if they don't understand how schedules work, but why would you try to go head to head with something that everyone in the US is anticipating, from a sports fan perspective? So big F for the NHL.
All right, I'm going B plus for Jacob Chikrin, and he just signed a huge contract there with Washington. But actually, what caught my attention was a story that came out when Dylan Strome said that he only uses candles in his house, and I thought that's kind of interesting. It kind of intrigued me, and now it's got me wanting to stock up on my beeswax, get some candles, and try a few candlelight evenings here at my place, see how that affects the circadian rhythm, see if I get a good night's sleep, and set a nice vibe here in the home. I love the idea. I only gave it a B plus because I don't know how sustainable it is, but going straight candles, pretty cool idea.
Love it. All right, my final one, another A for London Knight, Sam Dickinson. He just beat the London Knights record for points by a defenseman with 91. He beat Evan Bouchard and Rick Corvo and did it in just 55 games, put up 91 points. Like, this guy's going to be a stud. He had 2 goals last night in their playoff game, and the future is bright for the San Jose Sharks. So big A.
Good stuff. That wraps up the weekly report card. As we look towards the next episode here, when we kind of wrap things up for the day, we've got a couple things coming up that we wanted to talk about. Hey, you kind of hit on a few things, but we got CHL playoffs just kicking off last week. We've got the Frozen Four and NCAA, so we've got some good action that we're going to start to follow a little bit more on the junior side of things. We're doing a classic episode coming up. Do you want to talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, this one's going to be good. This is, you might open up a lot of old wounds for one fan base, but we're going back to 1993, and we're going to be doing LA Kings versus Toronto Maple Leafs, Game 6, the controversial high stick. I've watched this game now. I'm in my second run through it, and like, hockey was so good back then. Like, it's just amazing to see the crowd in Toronto and all these big names on the ice. And obviously everyone knows how it turns out for the Leafs, but it was hard to watch and not get angry that it didn't go their way. But it's going to be fun to just talk about that, watch the game again, get some different insight because it's been so long. There's a lot of good articles written about it, and I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I can't wait to dig into that. I'm going to take my first run through here this afternoon. We're going to record that one. So we've just to keep everybody updated, we're going to be dropping them Monday as consistently as we can. We're going to record 2 next weekend so we can drop 1 and then the classic episode the following week. And then we'll be back in time for our playoff preview, which is only a couple weeks away, so that'll be exciting. Speaking of the playoffs, we're talking about doing a hazy playoff pool, so we're gonna figure out sort of formats for that. So if you're listening and you think you're interested in getting in on that, could be a fun way, just interactive thing to do with anybody that's listening out there, and a good way to just make the playoffs a little bit more interesting. So we'll have an update on probably the next episode for that, and we'll give out our email address so you guys can reach out and let us know if you're interested.
Yeah, man.
Other than that, I think that pretty much wraps everything up for the day. So Charlie, great catching up with you again. Glad to be re-immersed in the hockey world, back from the bachelor party, and we've got a good 2-week stretch here to the playoffs. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Later, buddy.